Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hello, Zainab.
Hi, Haidar.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. I saw your post on LinkedIn about this whole rant about, coming from an Iraqi family living in the UK, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to speak to her.
It has to be. Yeah, I love a rant. I do love a rant.
I mean, it's a bit unfair for the listeners, to be honest, because I'm picking my guests rather than rather than my listeners.
I'm not what the people want. Hopefully we can change it by the end of this podcast.
It's not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just having conversations with people I think who are interesting, and but do you know what? I think you're the third Iraqi on the podcast, so maybe there is a bit of a trend there.
The theme, yeah.
Maybe there is a bit of a trend there in our podcast. But I think we're a diverse bunch as Iraqis.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's really easy. I think people, even physically, they're like, you don't look Iraqi. I'm like, what does an Iraqi look like? It spans so many different skin tones, so many different hair types. Yeah, there's no one.
I mean, what are they thinking? I mean, when they say Iraqi, is it sort of like sort of Saddam-like kind of characteristics?
I think so. I think it's fanatic Muslim looking is what I reckon they're angling at.
I think I was aiming for that when I was younger. I was definitely aiming to be a fanatical Muslim Shia. That was my whole kind of persona, or sort of, I tried to sort of give that off, but I'm just too kind for that. I'm such a weakling. Just if I see someone suffer, I sort of fall to pieces.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I've had many arguments growing up with lots of Sunni friends. Actually, me having to defend Shia Islam and me kind of on the back foot, not instigating it. Because one thing my parents told me to never discuss, which has not actually worked for me, is never discuss religion or politics with friends, because it will always end badly, which I think is like somewhat good advice. Have I always taken it? No. But yeah, I think there's so much hate between the sects in Islam, and I think there's a lot of room for love.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of defending like the underdogs. So when I was with my mates, I'll be defending Shia Islam, and then when I was with my parents, I'll be like arguing against Shia and sort of more, with the Sunni kind of point of view.
That's funny because we're both very similar.
Yeah, and it was weird because I was always thinking about the underdog. So whatever the general narrative was,
yeah,
I was like, oh, but how about? I mean, apart from football, of course, then you have to support Liverpool, or otherwise.
Oh God, we're gonna clash. It's Man United in my family, so yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, this Liverpool Man U thing. I remember when I was because I was born in Iraq, and over there, your uncles, just talked about football all the time, and it was always even then it was between Man U and Liverpool.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and occasionally, you had a bit of Tottenham there.
Yeah. So I was born in Blackburn in the north of England. So we were actually Blackburn Rovers supporters, and me and my brother had pictures of us in the kits. And then I don't know when it happened that we just jumped to Man United, but then I've always sold it as, well, I was born near Manchester. So yeah, that's my excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I came here at the age of 4, and we went to Nottingham. So I supported Nottingham, and this was during the sort of the late 70s when they were winning everything. I guess we like the winning formula, isn't it? If someone's winning, then it really entices us. And then Liverpool started winning everything in the 80s. And then I got really depressed in the 90s. I was clinically depressed in the 90s because Man U were winning everything, and it was just a horrible time. And it made me totally disillusioned with football. And I stopped, supporting
Okay.
Liverpool and sort of I sort of disengaged emotionally with football
Yeah.
because of Man U winning so much.
It's interesting. My family are literally diehard fans, and yeah, they get very, very emotional and angry about it. But we'll come to the topic of anger and Iraqis, I think, as well, because that's
So
something
sort of
to
die
touch on.
hard Man U or
Yeah,
oh
diehard
well.
Man U. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You
And
can't
is
say a
this
bad word.
and like, because your family's from Karbala, I believe.
Yes, they are.
Is that a sort of a Karbala thing, the Man U thing, or is that
I'm not sure, to be honest. I've never really heard. I think it was more they got into it when they came here.
uh,
So
mm.
yeah, I'm not too sure.
Well, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? We are attracted by that sort of winning formula,
Mm,
the winning team. It's very attractive.
yeah, yeah.
What won it for you? I mean, apart from football and apart from sort of Blackburn, what really won it for you as a young girl growing up here?
Um, Taking it back to something you mentioned earlier in terms of fighting for the underdog, I think that was always me as well. And I've always had a real sense of like justice and fairness. And for me, as a British Iraqi growing up in the era of the Iraq War, was just like super something that really, really engaged me. And I was like, just by some small twist of fate, I feel like that could have been me. I could have been there. That could have been my family. And we were just very lucky that they managed to get out. And I have a very different life. So I felt like justice and fairness was something that was really, really tied to me. It then became really apparent that justice and fairness was only when it was relevant to Arabs or when it was relevant to Shia Iraqis. So if I was trying to defend Iraqi Sunnis or, you know, other people, that doesn't fly, which really kind of used to grind my gears, especially because I grew up as quite a conservative Muslim. And I'd kind of throw it back. Probably you can resonate. I'd throw it back. I'm like, but that's not very Islamic. That doesn't quite sit with what Islam says. Like I'm a bit confused. So yeah, I was sent to quite a religious Arabic school on the weekends. My brother got to go to a way more chilled Arabic school, and he used to come home and like tell me all these stories of like the fun he'd have and like how he was messing around all the time and like just having a really good time. I was sent to an all girls Arabic school, which was really strict, and I was the one who was forever like Khala, which means like auntie. It's like a respectful way of addressing someone who's older than you. And I would be like, Khala, but what? This doesn't make sense to me. Like, why is this like this? And I think I was probably her pet hate in that class because I would always just question things, but why? And interestingly, the response was always from my parents anyway, just because. And it used to wind me up. I'm like, I want to know the reason why. If there's a logical explanation for this, explain it to me. Whereas I think I was shut down quite a lot in terms of this is just how it is. You just got to deal with it.
I mean, what specific things really grinded your gears at that time?
I think so. As an example, I used to wear a hijab, like a head covering, from about 9 to 15. I was really, really nervous about telling my parents because, yeah, my parents are both really, really deeply religious. And yeah, I kind of felt somewhat pressured into doing it, but then I was basically guilt tripped. It was like, well, you don't have to, but you're going to go to hell if you don't, kind of thing. And your mum wears it, and like people expect you to wear it, kind of thing. So I felt slightly coerced into wearing it, though it wasn't like forced. So yeah, when I started to rebel at 15, I was really nervous about telling them. I remember when I spoke to my mum, I was like, okay, this is what I'm thinking of doing, like, testing the waters. And her response was, well, you can't do that because people have seen you in it. And I was like, what kind of explanation is that? And then I went to my dad and actually sat there for ages. And he was like, yeah, I was too scared to say anything. We were watching some BBC documentary. And he was like, I hear that you've got something you want to talk to me about. Your mum's told me something. And I was like, oh shit, okay, it's happening. And then his response was, okay, well, you can't because in Islam, X, Y, and Z, and like started to explain it more from a religious point of view. And the difference in that for me was like major because I was like, okay, it really annoyed me and pissed me off that my mum's response was, well, you can't, people have seen you in it. And I know that's like translates across loads of brown communities and like black communities probably of, what does a community think? What will they say? And that just used to really, really wind me up. And the focus around almost everyone else's happiness comes before yours
Mm.
is, yeah, tough.
And I mean, what happened at the age of 15? You said that the sort of 15 was the milestone.
Yeah, so I didn't go to a great school. So I went to a state school that wasn't very great. I didn't necessarily have my talent harnessed. It was very much like it was a tough school to go to. It was teen pregnancies, it was, stabbings, rivalries, people basically, it was either, conform to messing around or be bullied, basically. So I kind of fell into that trap where I wanted to be cool. And actually it was really superficial. I just felt like I was an ugly duckling. And everyone around me, you know, that I was hanging around with had their hair out, makeup, and yeah, it was quite superficial. I was just like, I just feel like shit all the time, and I just don't want to. And it kind of then came out that actually, yeah, I never wanted to really. I just felt kind of pressured into it. And then I started wearing my scarf a bit differently, you tie it around here. I had a rose in it that was like really trendy at the time.
Mm.
And then people at school were like, you might as well take it off. Like you're not wearing hijab properly. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe I do just take it off.
Were these
Um,
Muslims that said those things, or was it, yeah, Muslims? Yeah.
yeah, I was quite upset because there was one argument with someone who, yeah, just turned around and was like, well, you didn't even wear your hijab properly anyway. And I was like, firstly, you don't even wear a hijab. So I don't know where this is coming from. And yeah, and it was quite, yeah. And I felt like I'm just going to take it off basically. And yeah, I started to act up in classes. Um, I actually found my school reports the other day, and the grades were always pretty decent, but it was always that she talks too much. She's always talking. If only she could stop talking, which was quite funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, I used to be, yeah, motor mouth in
I think I
class.
read your book, and that was something that came through, which made me laugh. I was like,
Oh
yes,
my
same.
God. Yeah, I used to talk so much. I mean, I definitely had ADHD sort of by today's standard,
Yeah,
in those days. And but I mean, I never felt as though I fitted in ever in any kind of place. I always felt a
mm.
bit odd and odd one out. Um,
Yeah. What was your school experience
yeah, I
like?
mean, I went to a comprehensive, so it was called comprehensives in those days, and it was a boys' school, of course, because um, my mum's father and grandfather were all well-known imams and Islamic orators and yeah, well-known scholars, and my granddad on my dad's side is a well-known orator as well. So yeah, it was, look, you can't speak to girls, you can't look at girls, you can't touch girls, you can't do
Mm.
anything like that. So yeah, it was like half yourself, wasn't it?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know, you weren't
Yeah.
complete at all. So it was a bit, yeah, it was a bit lopsided, really. I was a bit wobbling,
Mm.
hobbling more. Hop.
Hobbling. How has that changed for you then, like then versus now, in terms of feeling like you belong somewhere? Do you feel that still, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely accepted that I can belong anywhere, It doesn't have to be one group or one particular way of thinking or one society or, you know. But I've certainly become much more conservative. I mean, whereas before I was sort of a lot more sort of rebellious and sort of a lot more left leaning.
Mm,
As I've got
interesting.
older, yeah, as I've got older, I've
Okay.
I've realized that it's actually quite good to sort of conform and sort of be within the system because you live longer, and sort
Mm,
of I'm thinking more about,
that's interesting.
yeah, longevity rather than um showing your mark and showing your individuality.
Interesting.
And that's because I'm getting old, you see, that's why.
Yeah, I think I may be in that halfway phase where, yeah.
So you kind of like, with the wrong crowd, and then you were sort of uh you weren't totally sort of bought into the whole hijab sort of way of living. And was there any kind of regrets? Did you think, oh, I'm in the wrong family, and in the wrong part of the world?
Um, I don't think so. I
Mm,
I I love my family dearly, and I know how much they love me. I think there's always been a sense of my family's not proud of me.
mm,
I just constantly disappoint them, and that's not a nice feeling to have. Often people, when they share things about themselves, it's like, one of their aims in life is to make their parents proud. So especially maybe in this, I mean, in lots of different cultures actually, and including like UK society. So it's quite a hard thing to kind of accept. And it's only in the past couple of years, to be honest, that I've accepted that I need to make myself proud. And like if I want to sleep at night, then it's me that I have to care about. So I didn't necessarily regret that. I've also I did resent it at the time. I think more in the past few years, I've come to appreciate what being from an Iraqi family is and has done, and I'm really proud of it. But yeah, there was definitely some moments where it was really, really tough.
yeah, yeah. And how did you come to that conclusion that you're sort of proud to have come from that heritage?
I think because I realized it's made me who I am. I think for a long time I resented the hypocrisy, I think, of many Iraqi Muslims, many Muslims more generally. And I think I pulled away a lot from my faith because I was like, well, this is just, I'm not gonna be preached at by people who can't abide by kind of their own words, right? So, I've been called un-Islamic by people who have been backbiting. So backbiting is something that's forbidden in Islam. So you shouldn't be talking about someone behind their back without them present. So yeah, ironically, I've been called, un-Islamic by people who are backbiting and
Mm,
and saying that behind my back. So it's things like that that kind of steered me away. And I think it took me a long time to understand that culture is different from religion. And actually, even if I don't, I want to take the learnings of Islam, not necessarily the rigidity of it, because I think there are like lots of religions, it is about being ultimately a good person. Like, I don't see religion as, I don't think it has to be as restrictive. I think it does come down to being a good person. And if you're a good person, I think that's really good. So yeah, it took me a while to detach from the culture and the religion and actually appreciate the culture. And it's such a rich culture. Like I know everyone will say that about where they're from, but the Iraqi culture is so rich. And yeah, I'm always really sad that I just can't travel there and experience it. And yeah.
when was the last time you were there?
So I went there just after Saddam Hussein got taken down. So there was a very, very brief period where I guess people were just happy that he was gone and the the power fight hadn't started yet. People weren't organizing well enough at that point to think about it. So my parents pulled me out of school. They said, okay, we're going to take 2 weeks for Easter. And then they wrote a letter saying, we want to pull them out for 2 weeks. So I got given homework. And yeah, we went. And that was the first time. So when was that? I guess I was like maybe 11,
That
something
must have
like
been
that.
exciting.
Yeah, super exciting. Super exciting. I don't even think I was scared. I was like really excited. I was meeting like, extended family. It was a really emotional trip. My dad hadn't seen his siblings who were in Iran for about like 20 years, like something like that. Like he hadn't seen them for a really, really long time. So it was very, very emotional. Like that reunion, like is etched in my head where we were at a religious mosque. What do you call them? Like we were at
Shrine.
like yeah, shrine is the word I was looking for. And yeah, I just remember my auntie just running and hugging my dad and just sobbing for like a really long time. So yeah, it was exciting, it was emotional, it was strange because people knew you weren't from around here. Even to my parents, they'd be like, "Where are you from?" And my mum would be like, "Here, this is my home." And they would know, they're like, "You're not from around here." And yeah, me and my brother had braces at the time, and they were like, "What the hell is that in your teeth?" And I was like, "This is gonna help my teeth." And they'd have their tea, so we have traditional tea in like a little teacup. The sugar is half the amount of the tea. I was just like, yeah, but it was lovely. It felt like real community. Like we'd all sit around on the floor on a sofa, like a big, yeah, a big kind of plate setting, and it was
Yeah.
just lovely. Like to have such, it was just such a big family kind of gathering, and it was really nice. Like some really
Yeah,
lovely
it was like
memories.
sort of daily banquets, basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like they were obviously, oh, they were so excited that we were there. They were slaughtering animals for us, which is like a just traditional thing.
Yeah.
It's like a good luck, good luck thing, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, a respect thing. Um, yeah, they were super excited to have us there. They were just like regaling stories of like the old days, and something that was striking was for my mum actually. So they left in what, let's say the 80s, maybe a bit earlier. And my mum was really surprised. She's like, when we left like all those years ago, uh, they were using like gas lanterns, like yeah. And she was like, I can't believe they're still using gas lanterns to this day. Like they was on generators, like the electricity would go out all the time. And she was like, it, how has it not progressed? Like, you know, Iraq specifically was one of the most kind of advanced nations in terms of healthcare and things like that. And to see it like that, I think was really tough for my parents.
And your brother's older or younger than you?
Oh, my brother. He's my older brother by a couple of years.
Yeah.
I think he will admit that I'm probably the older sister
Yeah. No, they're
in the
much
relationship.
mature, they're much wise, and
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
person
think
everyone
he'll be
goes to for
happy.
advice. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm sure he'll be happy to admit it.
Yeah. I mean, I was quite lucky because I was sandwiched between two sisters.
Oh, okay. You're the middle child. How was
Yeah.
that?
So I got, some really good techniques of, how to manipulate and how to
There you
use
go.
psychological warfare and all that kind of stuff.
There you go.
So
There you go. Yeah. But yeah, that was me growing up. My would get my brother into trouble,
yeah.
bless him, and then
And
be really
then
upset when my dad would tell him off. Be like, don't tell him off.
yeah. I mean, and then my younger brother, he used that whole thing, and then he became the sort of, the new Darth Vader, and
Wow.
you
So
know, so,
you've got four. You're four.
I've got another two brothers who came after my,
Ah, wow,
younger
mashallah.
brother. So
Wow.
I've got three brothers and two sisters.
Wow, big Iraqi family. Yeah,
Yeah.
my parents on both sides have really a lot of siblings. And then with my brother, it's just him and I. So yeah, it stopped at
The
two.
two devious conniving twins sort of.
Yeah, yeah. To be honest, I've said to my mum, I'm glad you didn't have more kids. I can just about cope with my brother, and that's I'm good.
Well,
I'm good, you
yeah.
know.
It's all scheming and sort of, how to get one up on each other. That's all we do
Exactly.
as siblings,
Exactly.
all six
Exactly.
of us.
Oh,
Constant battle.
yeah, I can imagine.
So how long did you stay out there for?
Uh, a, a
When you're taken out of
month,
school?
a month. So it was quite like
Uh,
quite a long time, which was really nice. Really strange, obviously, to come back and sad to leave. Yeah, it was an interesting time. They kind of were like, I have always thought my Arabic is very good, and they were laughing at my brother and I's Arabic. They're like, oh my God, why do you sound English? I was like, you should hear my half English cousins. They sound English. Like we speak good Arabic. So yeah, that was funny.
Wow, wow. And then I mean how did that affect you sort of going to Iraq and coming back? You know, how did that sort of change you as a you know, an Iraqi born in Britain?
I think it took me back to like that justice, that sense of injustice, I guess,
Mm.
of, oh my God, I'm going here. I can see the like poverty, I can see the struggle. And yeah, I think that again shaped kind of who I am today in terms of I'm all about kind of equality, a sense of justice, fighting for the underdog, even when it's not, you know, maybe socially acceptable in whatever circles. Um, that has been a key theme throughout my life, and I think that trip really shaped that in terms of yeah, that's kind of yeah, that's kind of who I am.
Did
Yeah.
you get involved in politics or sort of activism?
So yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. So I actually was supposed to study politics. So I was like ready to get involved. And I applied for politics at SOAS University. And my backup was Manchester. So I really wanted to leave London because I was like, I need to get away from my parents. Obviously, they were like, you're absolutely not moving out of London. I was like, okay. I really wanted to go to SOAS because it's so political. It's one of the most political unis you can get. So I was like, I really want to go there. Um, I didn't get in for politics, so I just missed out on a grade. So I got two A's and a B. And I was like, oh, I don't want to get, I really want to go to SOAS. So a friend told me, a family friend said, get in on clearing for Middle Eastern studies and then just switch on to politics. So I was like, okay, cool. I went, I did it, got in through clearing, went to try to change to politics. They're like, we're absolutely full. They're like, you can do law and politics or law if you want. And then I was like, umming and ahhing. And then obviously swayed to kind of society and what they tell you. I was like, you know what? Maybe law isn't a bad shout. Like maybe it's better to just go full law. I can do some elective modules. So I did government politics in the Middle East and things like that, which I actually really enjoyed and ironically got quite decent grades for, much higher than my law modules. And then yeah, kind of then I would go to marches, Palestine marches and protests and things like that. I didn't have the confidence, I guess, to push it any further than that. I don't think I was surrounded with the right people necessarily at university. I didn't that, my family doesn't have that nature. So yeah, I think I was like kind of shied away from it. And I always wanted to be that person, but I never felt like I could live up. I could never do it justice, I guess. So I just never tried, which is an interesting theme in my life. So
Were your parents involved in politics?
no, not
No.
really. Not
Mm.
really. My dad's very yeah, he thinks a lot of crooks and yeah, just yeah.
So he left by sort of choice, or was he
So he
forced out?
actually moved to from Iraq to Iran, and he actually spent quite a few years there. He went to university there,
Mm.
and then when the revolution happened, yeah, he upped and left, and that's when he got married to my mum, and they were in Kuwait for a bit, and then they both came to Blackburn. But so even though he's really religious now, he actually wasn't very religious back then. He only actually became really religious when we moved to London. Even in Blackburn, he wasn't religious. But yeah, he would always say what happened with the revolution was just terrible. Like people should have the choice and it shouldn't be forced on you, which I think is quite an interesting perspective from someone who is obviously quite religious now.
So that's interesting. So he was in Iran and he left because of the Iranian Revolution at the end of the 70s.
Yeah, well, he was also involved in the Iraq-Iran war, and he served
Right.
in that. And his younger brother, his youngest sibling, actually, sadly died on the Iraqi side. So I think that's something he's never really got over, that they were both fighting on different sides because he was doing service in Iran and his younger brother was obviously still in Iraq and doing service there. Yeah,
Is that
really.
because he's an Iranian national, your
I
father?
guess because he spent
Yeah.
so long there,
Right.
he
Right.
became. So yeah, I've got access to like Iranian citizenship as well as Iraqi. But
I see.
he didn't go back to Iran for like 30 years. When he left, he just left. He was like, I don't want to go back to the kind of regime that's like that, that's in place. Which is
And he
why
hasn't been back since.
he did. So after the Iraq trip, after
Yeah.
he told his siblings who were all still in Iran, meet me in Iraq. That was the first time he saw them.
Yeah.
And then he's periodically, before ill health, he's gone back a few times with us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, did you go to Iran a few times then during the
Yeah, a few
yeah.
times, a few times. Risky business, to be honest. We have some family friends who I grew up with who were there at the same time, so it was quite fun for me. So we went paintballing with a group of my family friends' family, but it was a mixed group, so it was girls and boys, which you're not allowed to do in Iran. So everything is segregated.
Hmm.
So we were followed by like secret police, and I was due to leave Iran the next day, but I'd gone in on an Iranian passport. So if they had held us, they can do what they want to you if you've got an Iranian passport. So
Hmm.
I mean, they seem to do what they want if you've got a British passport, but it's even worse if you go in on an Iranian passport. But I was too young to understand that at the time. And I was really annoyed at my parents when I realized afterwards, like, why did you
Yeah, yeah.
take us in on
Everything we just blame the parents. Anything goes wrong.
that was in fairness, that was their fault. I was like, how could you take us in on an Iranian passport? They're like, it's easier, blah blah blah. I'm like, no, if something goes wrong, like it's not easier, is it? But
Yeah, but they didn't know that their, rebellious daughters were going to go out partying and
paintballing it
bloody.
was. It
Yeah,
was
right.
it
Yeah,
was
right.
paintballing. Yeah, it was good
Mixed
fun.
paintball. Yeah, right.
Mixed,
Yeah.
mixed. It's code. It's code.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I went to Iran a few times. I mean, we've got a mixture of Iranians and Iraqis, and if we go back about 4 generations, it's Iranians.
Same. Yeah.
Um, but we're very much with the regime, the regime and the revolution. Um, that was my kind of upbringing,
Okay,
and
interesting.
yeah, and when I was I remember I was in Iran in '84, and it was being bombarded by the Iraqi army. It's sort of quite surreal. It's like,
Yeah.
here's me,
Wow.
born in Iraq, sort of deflected over to Iran, and now being
Wow.
bombed by the Iraqis. And
That's yeah.
my dad was doing a lot of, sort of charity work there, and for the Iraqi refugees.
Nice.
My mother lost two of her brothers during the
Oh,
war.
that's really
So,
sad.
and two were kind of missing. So we were kind of, they were sort of
That's
looking
really
for
sad.
him, and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just
The
a mess,
trauma
really.
that, yeah,
It's a
the
mess.
trauma that I think people forget. I think they think with the Iraq War, the trauma exists with that generation maybe of people suffering in Iraq, but actually it backdates to British Iraqis and like what their families went through
Yeah,
there
yeah,
as well. It's like, yeah, the
yeah.
trauma just
Well,
continues,
we
which
kind of, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I very much feed off kind of sadness and
mm.
pain and suffering. It
Yeah,
kind of gives me fuel.
my friends laugh at me. They're like, one friend in particular is like, you make yourself more sad. He's like, you're the type of person who will play music and like look out the window and like cry. I was like, that's an accurate, that's an accurate explanation of, yeah,
Well, there's a
who
lot
I
of
am.
depth there, you see. There's a lot of depth in
Yeah, it's like
sadness.
cathartic. It's like
Yeah.
how I see it is people don't lean into their feelings, right? They push it down, push it down, push it down, and it erupts. And actually, I even think from an early age, I've always been quite in tune with my feelings and like sadness. And I don't think, I mean, there's negatives to that. Like my mental health suffers because people say, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Like if something happens in Iraq or the Middle East or anything else in the US with, you know, Black Americans, I harbor it, and I'm like, wow, the world is a really messed up place. And for a while, I would just see it like that. I was like, I'm not having kids. I'm not bringing kids into this world. Like, look at it. Like, why would I do that? Um, yeah, and I had to really fight for in the past few years, especially like, no, there is good in the world. Like, there's a lot of good people wanting to do good things, and there's glimmers of like happiness and hope, and yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I mean my point is that there's a lot of wisdom in this aspect of life.
Mm,
The sadness and the sorrow and
yeah,
suffering.
totally.
But from that, you can bring out the positive and
Mm.
the productive in life. And I think that's what I mean, that's why I wrote my book is to
I was
show
just
that,
gonna
yeah,
say your book, it was a really positive book. Like I
yeah,
left
I mean
feeling
it's
really
it's very
positive.
dark. It's a dark book, but then
Mm.
there's always a glimmer
Dark at
of,
times.
yeah,
Dark at
there's
times.
always a glimmer of hope there, even
Mm.
though it's
And yeah,
as you
you do
said,
it with like
cathartic
a
and
uplifting tone. And maybe it's because I had a chat with you before I read your book, so I knew your personality slightly, but like it really shone through the book, and there were lots of really like funny bits that I was just smiling. So I was like, oh my God, we're very similar.
yeah. Laughing and sort of comedy is something that's part and parcel of the Iraqi way of life, I think.
Yeah, it's true. It
You
is
know,
true.
I mean, my earliest memory, I was probably about three, and I was in Kurdistan at the time, and all I remember was just, essentially laughing and farting like that. That was my way of life, really.
I love
And
it.
you eat, you fart, and then you laugh, and then you do
Yeah,
it again,
amazing.
and
What a great ethos for life. I love it.
so, what was, I mean, I'm really interested because I've got two daughters. They wear hijab,
Mm.
and one's kind of okay. The other one's, I always get the sort of dirty looks constantly. Not that I'm the one who's like, doing all the hard work. It's my wife because,
Yeah.
she's really, you know, um, she's a real stormtrooper, so to speak. Um, it must have been a massive decision for you, not
Which,
not
oh
wearing the
yeah,
head.
not wearing
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
it was because I was young, right? Like I obviously at the time didn't think I was young, but I was only 15. I think it paved the way, it opened the way for the disappointment, right? So anything that I did after that, it was just like, oh, here she goes again. Here's another one, add to the list. But it was tough. My dad didn't speak to me for about 3 months. My mum was really off with me. She I guess couldn't not speak to me, right? Because I had one parent not talking to me. So obviously two is very intense. But yeah, it was tough. And even up till now, like, the years would go when my dad would be like, I'm not walking out the house with you without a hijab, put a hijab on. Or I would walk around and we'd see a family friend and he'd be like, put your hood up. And I was constantly like on edge of what, when I'd be out and about of being seen without it, being seen with makeup on, being seen dressed in a certain way. Even recently, my dad's been unwell, and I'd be like, Dad, let's go for a walk. He's like, in those tight gym leggings. I'm like, well, what would you want me to wear on a walk? I'm wearing gym leggings, and it would be like, yeah, I could see the embarrassment that he faces when we bump into someone. So
And that
yeah,
hasn't changed.
not much. It has largely, but my dad, to be honest, doesn't leave the house much anymore. So
Mm.
that's probably the only reason why it hasn't. But yeah, it's not changed dramatically, no.
But you've changed, I mean, you've become more comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah, I think it took a really, really long time, but yeah, I'd like to say I'm probably the most, and people probably say that as they get older, like I'm at the most comfortable as I am. I've done a lot of internal work on myself, a lot of unpacking with mental health, which I think, yeah, is a massive stigma, obviously, in lots of communities, but particularly Arab and Iraqi communities, where it's not really seen as an issue. It's like, especially I think for generations of my parents, for example, right? It's like, let me get this straight. So I uproot my life and move to a whole different country, an un-Islamic country. So my mum always says, we didn't want to move here. We wanted to raise you in an Islamic country. Like, obviously rebellious me will be like, well, why did you come here if you don't want me to be X, Y, and Z? And it would be heartbreaking because she'd be like, we didn't want to come here, right? Like I would have wanted to raise you in Iraq as, Iraqi in a Muslim country. And so that was really, really tough to hear. But yeah, there was no understanding or recognition. It's like, what do you mean mental health? Like, like, just get out of here with that chat. Like, what mental health? We just persevere, we just keep going, we just, in many ways stiff upper lip like the Brits, like, we just keep going, like we don't break down, particularly mothers, right? Like we don't, you matriarchs, like heads of family really, and then the men obviously with the toxic masculinity of also can't break down. So it's quite a bad combination. So yeah, I had to really, really, to be honest, invest a lot of time and money into myself to get therapy, to exercise, to really do things that, yeah, none of my family have really done to this day. Um, and that's what's keeps me going, basically.
What really worked for you? What really worked for you?
Um, I think for me, I had a really bad period where, I tried really hard, got an amazing job offer at a law firm in London, had a really bad time, really, really bad time. So I suffered like a massive mental breakdown, and that's when I decided I'm leaving. To this day, I still get asked by family members, well, imagine how much money you'd be earning if you stayed in law. And I'm like, at the cost of my mental health. And they're like, yeah, like, can't have been that bad. And I'm like, um, so yeah, some of the things that really worked for me, like one of the probably biggest things is exercise. So I didn't grow up with exercise. As you can imagine, in Iraq, it's hot. As you know,
Yeah.
actually, it's
Yeah.
hot. So my family never grew up with exercise. I actually never realized how much I like to be outdoors hiking. So for me, when I started to learn that, I went traveling on my own around the world and I started to hike. I started to spend time in nature and it was just really restorative. I was like, found exercise and I was like, oh my God, this is making me feel better. This is like really, really doing something for me. And ever since then, I've been exercising regularly and that's been really helpful. Meditation. So interestingly, again, this is why I say I'm not against Islamic principles. So Muslims pray 5 times a day. That's like a meditative practice, right? You're taking time out of your day to really focus in on something. I, stopped praying at one point, but actually meditation I found super helpful as well. Super tough to do, but I remember at my law firm, ironically, they invited someone to come in and do a session on meditation during the time that I was feeling really bad, and we did it was like a minute of meditating. I just felt this feeling of euphoria. Like I can still remember sitting in that room being like, holy shit, man, like what's this feeling? Like I just feel really like elated. And then that's when I started my journey on meditation, mindfulness. It was really funny because that birthday that year, for my birthday, everyone started to get me self-help books, which I found super funny because I was like, all right, guys, you're telling me something. Like it was funny, but it's because they knew of my interest in that. And that's where I really started like my interest and focus with the mind, with the body. I know that's why, I knew I'd get along really well with you, and reading your book really, really struck because I know that's something that's not necessarily focused on in the Arab community or the Iraqi community, but it's something that, yeah, helped me massively.
And which country did you sort of enjoy the most visiting, and what happened?
You know what, Haidar, I did it all. So I did something like 13 countries or something. Was it that much? Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it was 11 countries. I did 11 countries in 8 months. Top countries, New Zealand and Colombia were like solid favorites. The first stop that I went to was Colombia. I didn't speak any Spanish. I was living at home at the time. All my friends were like, you're not coming back alive. They're like, you don't speak Spanish. You've never lived out of home. Your mum does everything for you. She cooks for you. She cleans for you. You are not going to survive.
You're 4'10" as well.
I'm 4'10", 4 foot nothing. They were like, what is going to happen to you on your own? And I was like, yeah, Allah yastur, I don't know. And to be honest, it was amazing. People basically thought I was Colombian, which I was like, okay. So actually, yeah, I got away with it because I looked like I was South American. So people just left me alone. Um,
Plus, you've got quite, piercing eyes as well, and I think, oh, this is a fiery Colombian woman, you
exactly. But then
know.
they'd be like, there was this one woman in the train station. I was like, in my broken Spanish, being like, I need this train time or whatever. She said, Colombiana, no? And I was like, no. And then I started to speak broken Spanish again, and she was just tripping out. She was like, how are you? What? Like, I'm really good. Why are you not speaking Spanish properly? And I was like, I'm not Colombian. Which was funny. But yeah, that was also one of the best experiences of my life. Like getting out of London, getting away. from family, from expectations. Like that was really like that really shaped me as a person as well, and like shaped who I am today. And I know that's not easy for many people, particularly young girls, to do, is in terms of, I'm just going to go off and do that. I actually, to this day, haven't really told my parents that I went on my own because I knew they'd just worry. But yeah, I can't recommend it enough yeah, for
And,
Arabs to
is the
come
world
there.
safe enough to do that? What would you say?
To be honest, I found it safe. I think,
Mm.
London is a dangerous place if you go to certain areas at certain times of night, right? So I knew that I was on my own. I knew that I'd have no one looking out for me. So I had to be careful. So yeah, I wouldn't walk around Colombia at 3 a.m. at night, but I'd say don't do that in London as well. So, it
Yeah.
wasn't, I found it by and large, safe. There's obviously some parts of Brazil that I went to that was, oh God, I don't feel entirely safe. But yeah, by and large, I think if you're careful and you find people to travel with, constant communication with family and like telling people you're okay and giving updates. Yeah,
And you use your Zainab sixth sense as well.
exactly. Exactly. Know
You
what's
know,
coming.
yeah. And I was going to ask you something, but oh yeah, what did all this traveling teach you? What has it taught you?
Wow. It taught me how to rely on myself ultimately. So I'd been mothered. So my mum, we used to live near school, secondary school. My mum, it was probably like a 15-minute walk, 20-minute maybe max. My mum would drive us even up till secondary school, up to year 11. She would drive us. And obviously, that's really embarrassing. Everyone else was walking to school, and I'd be like, Mum, park down that way. They actually did a documentary about my school, and my mum's in the video waving to the head teacher. But yeah, she wouldn't let us do anything. I wasn't allowed to go on sleepovers. I was hardly allowed to go and do anything. Like it was so restrictive. So for me doing that, I just learned how to just function. Like I learned that if I didn't wake up in the morning and have a plan and get myself there, don't get me wrong, like I messed it up so much. I didn't do it in the most economic way. I would book the wrong I one time booked the wrong plane ticket because it was easier to fly around Brazil. Got the wrong thing. It was £200 instead of what I thought was like 80. And obviously I couldn't get my money back. Like stuff like that. I definitely messed it up. But it was just such a good experience because nobody was doing it for me. I just had to do it myself. And it was so amazing because it was almost like a rainbow. It's like, okay, cool, you do all this work. At the end, I'd go on amazing hikes. I'd see amazing views. I'd have an amazing time. But like, okay, that's all because I did it. Like, I put a plan together and now I'm enjoying it. And like, look at what's possible if I put my mind to it. It was just an amazing, amazing time.
Wow, yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
a great traveler,
No,
I think
I
I
feel
get too
free.
anxious. I get too
Really?
anxious. Yeah.
What makes you anxious about it? Just the moving around and like,
No, just like catching stuff, particularly planes. If I miss
okay, I know
planes.
quite a few people who are afraid of planes. I'm actually very lucky that I'd always traveled to the Middle East as when I was younger, so I was really used to planes.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't have
I mean,
that.
I'm not scared of the planes, but just scared of missing the plane.
Oh, sorry. I actually know
So
quite a few people who don't like flights.
yeah. I mean, flights are okay. I mean,
Yeah,
I've seen all the movies and how they
yeah,
fall
yeah,
down
yeah,
and blow
yeah,
up,
yeah,
and that always goes through my mind,
yeah.
and that's
That's
still
awful.
okay. I'm still
Yeah,
okay with that. But it's just, oh my God, I'm going to miss the plane, and that comes from my mum as well. She's
yeah,
absolutely neurotic about
yeah. It's
traveling, and
interesting how things pass on from family because
yeah.
there's a
I mean,
lot.
I'm scared of
Yeah,
spiders, and my mum's scared of spiders, so.
yeah.
She's scared of heights. I'm scared of heights.
Wow.
So I was a total mama's boy, as I'm
Oh,
sure you sort of realized.
yeah.
You know,
All Iraqi men are mummy's boys. My brother is, yeah.
and it's only until like I'd say 5 years ago that I've actually said, "F you, mum, I'm
Oh
off."
wow. Oh really? Wow. What made you do that?
I was just too sick. I was just, you know, as in like I want to do something, but I've got to do whatever my mum wants first.
Yeah.
And that's just so contradictory to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I may be egocentric, and it may be the ego that's talking, and maybe sort of in the broader scheme of things, maybe it's probably the right thing that I do what my mum says or wants me to do. But there's no learning there, is there?
No, and actually, it's interesting you say that because my mum's probably never going to listen to this, so it's fine. My
I'll
mum
send
had
it to her. Don't worry, I'll
yeah,
send it to her.
get her address. So my mum had an arranged marriage, and she had her, who actually was her cousin, which I know is really common in lots of different cultures, particularly at that time. Surprised at how common it is these days, but anyway, that's
Yeah,
for
it's still
another.
common. It's still common.
Yeah,
I've got
that's
lots of
that's
relatives and in-laws and stuff like that.
yeah, really surprising. So thankfully that was before the time that you could take medical tests to check that your blood doesn't clash, right? Because there's lots of, disabilities that can come from that. Thankfully my brother and I were good. But yeah, my grandma basically orchestrated that and basically kind of told my mum, this is what you need to do. So she did it. She, good Iraqi girl did it. And my grandma died actually when my brother and I were really young. And it's always been a thing. My mum basically, was with my dad because her mum had told her to do that, but they didn't get on. They haven't had a great marriage. I don't think they wouldn't feel insulted to say that I say that because it's just the truth, to be honest. It's been difficult. My dad is 11 years older than my mum. Each one of them has had their own kind of challenges in life. But yeah, and that's something that stayed with me. My mum always said, I don't want to choose a person that you end up being with. I want you to choose them. A funny story, though, we're on the way back. She's driving me back from uni. She goes, yeah, I want you to choose for yourself. I don't want to put that on you. You should be choosing your partner. He's got to be Arab, of course. He's got to be Iraqi.
Wow.
And he has to be Shia as well.
Wow.
It would be helpful if he's from the same, city as us, Karbala. I was like, so you went from the world, you went to literally this group of people. So what kind of choice is that? You're
Well,
not
she
giving me a
can't
choice.
she can't let go of everything all at once.
Yeah, yeah. So that was funny. I was like, yeah,
one bit at a time.
one bit at a time. So yeah.
So who have you chosen then?
I'll save that for our next podcast. Podcast episode. That's too much to unpack.
But you've chosen someone.
Yeah, I have an inkling.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to cause too much conflict for you and your family.
I have enough conflict. It's Arabi stenders is what I call it to my friends, my white friends. They're like, when I tell them and recount some of the stuff, and you touched on it in your book, I think there was like a section on it in terms of what was it, like Iraqis or Arabs like love drama or no, they love arguing.
Yeah.
They love debating. I have never known people to just want to argue so much. And I don't know if that's the trauma that exists like within that like country. I don't know what it is. They almost like don't want peace. It's really interesting. Like even in Iraq now, politically, it's like nobody wants peace. Like obviously the people, but you know what I mean? Like there's always a problem. There's always negativity. There's always drama.
Well, you see, you've got to deal with demons. You either deal with other people's demons, and hence, you argue, or you deal with your own demons. So when you're at peace,
that's interesting.
You have to deal with your own demons.
Yeah, and that's such a valid point because I say to my family all the time, therapy changed me, meditating changed me, staying out of people's lives and focusing on my own changed me. Like I'm so much calmer than I used to be. I always used to bite. When things would happen within the family, I'd bite. Whereas now I'm just like, I let it roll off my back. I'm like, all right, you guys do you, I'll do me. But yeah, it is sad knowing that family members are suffering because they won't get help and they see it as a negative thing. They see it as I don't need the help. It's like we all need the help, like everyone in the world, should have therapy.
I think people find their own way of sort of getting help, and we mustn't underestimate that. It may not sort of coincide with how we find help.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, definitely, I've isolated more of myself from my sibling family and parents. My parents separated, and going back to what you said, the only time we had peace in our family is when my parents were apart. It was,
Wow. That's
we
so interesting.
we
Yeah.
had peace and quiet, but once they got
Yeah.
together, it was like two worlds colliding.
Yeah, I think it's like the stigma of I think my parents didn't want to separate, but I've always said if you separated, the irony is my mum says we stayed together for you, for the kids. I'm like respectfully, we're, at the time I was like, we're mid 20s now. Like, we're not
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
But
I
yeah,
mean, that's taught me a lot in terms of me and my relationship with my wife. I mean, I had
interesting.
an arranged marriage, and
Mm.
we're together now for nearly 22 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that sort of taught me a lot about what I saw with my parents and the struggle
Yeah,
that
and yeah,
they
not
went through being married. And
mm,
I think my dad wanted to marry my mum, so he was the driving force
okay.
in that. Um, and for me, growing up in the UK, I was a devout Muslim, Shia Muslim, didn't have any girlfriends, didn't touch any girls, whatever, nothing.
Yeah.
I was like ready for anything,
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
that
yeah.
was marryable, so to
Yeah.
speak. So,
Happens a lot, doesn't it?
and this was me coming through a UK medical school,
Oh yeah, you were
in
you
the
were prime.
90s.
Yeah, you were you must have
It's
been
weird,
on
isn't
on
it, how you
everyone's
can have
radar.
these, it's like how you can have these sort of isolated pockets of, I mean, they look normal on the outside, but inside they're just like totally.
Yeah, my mum used to always send me pictures of Iraqi men, and there was one that was a doctor. She sent me this picture of him holding a baby. And then my dad was like, "You better take him because he's a doctor. Like, what are you? Like, Dr. Trump's lawyer." And I was like, "Wow, okay, cool." Like, yeah.
Yeah, but it works. I mean, it
Mm,
works. This sort of hierarchy of value does actually
mm,
work on the bigger scale.
mm.
um we just have to overcome our individual
Yeah.
objections. I don't know. I mean, it works. It works. um but yeah. uh yeah, constant conflict. I don't think
Mm,
conflict will ever disappear at all.
yeah.
um but then, we need that kind of pushback anyway for us to
Yeah, I
keep
think it's definitely
keep
shaped.
toggling,
Yeah.
our own way of doing things and sort of thinking.
Yeah. It's definitely
um
shaped who I am. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Any plans of visiting Iraq in the near future?
I would really love to. The thing is, I wouldn't go on my own.
Yeah.
So it's just about my mum's wanted to go back for years. Her and my dad did go back a few years ago, but my dad was unwell there and had to go into hospital there. And obviously the hospitals there
Oh
aren't
dear.
great. So yeah, that was like a not obviously not a great trip. So yeah, I'd really like to go back probably with my uncles and my mum. Yeah, I'd love
Mm.
to.
Yeah,
How,
I mean, my in-laws live in Iraq, and my dad lives there
okay.
as well.
When was the
you
last
know
time you went?
Well, I didn't go since the pandemic, and that
Oh
was because
God,
of
yeah.
work, really, because, work has been totally non-stop. And I mean,
Yeah.
my family went back, so they went during the lockdown,
Oh, okay.
because, my wife needs to see her parents
Yeah, yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. And my dad comes over once or twice a year. Um,
Oh, that's nice.
so yeah, I'm constantly there. Plus I worked there for many years, so I kind of, it's like a second home to me.
Have an attachment. Yeah, and
Yeah.
way more than me. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I'd really love to go
I
back.
mean, there's a lot of unconscious work there, that you can do. Just sort of go
Mm,
there and sort of realize who you are and what you're about and why you do what you
totally,
do. And I
totally.
think it's something that constantly speaks to you.
Yeah, I feel like I when I was there, right, I was at 11. I'm 31 now, so it will be like a very different and
Yeah,
emotional experience in a different way. So
yeah.
yeah, you know what? I keep saying I need to do it, but I'm gonna have a chat with my mum and see.
Yeah, have a
see
chat,
see what
and
we can
then you
do.
can let us know how it goes, and
Yeah, I'll do a little vlog,
yeah, sort
keep
of
keep people
Zainab
updated.
2.0.
Yeah, with a hijab probably. Yeah,
Why not? Why not? You know, the full whack, the full
the full
Monty.
shebang, the full shebang.
I mean, it's been absolutely awesome speaking to you today.
Oh,
I know we can speak a lot longer, and
yeah,
there's probably
definitely.
lots of things that we didn't touch up on.
Next time.
But I'm
Thank you
looking
so much.
forward to your thoughts, because you know you've got some great insights, and
Oh,
you know you're a deep thinker, and that's what I liked about the post that you did on LinkedIn.
thank you so much,
Um,
Haidar. Thank you for having me. It's been really, really lovely. It's felt like a really lovely, relaxed conversation, and I've really loved it. And yeah, your book is great. So thank you for
I
putting that
didn't pay
out
you for that,
into
did
the world.
I?
You
I didn't.
didn't, not yet. Are you going to send me something in the
I
post?
will. I will.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you know,
But
you.
yeah, check it out. It's amazing. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.